When you say you got really dysregulated, how does that show up?
In this 1 week period, my mother died and I was beaten unconscious on the street and I just lost it.
We're not really set up to be happy. We're set up to survive.
I reached a point where I knew that I had no idea what to do.
Because you felt like you knew better, you have the skills, and you blew it?
I'm the crappy childhood fairy. I'm supposed to know.
In your latest book, Connectability, you talk about how to speak in a way that you're heard.
All it was a piece of paper and a pen, and it was basically a written prayer. When that happened, everybody could see the difference in me.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the show. So today I'm going to be sitting down with Anna Runkle, and you might know her online, I love this, as the crappy childhood fairy, to talk about her new book, Connectability. So Anna has helped millions of people around the world heal from long-term effects of growing up in maybe a chaotic home or trauma using tools that are both practical and deeply personal. Her work focuses on regulating the nervous system, rebuilding trust with yourself, and learning how to truly connect, not just with others, but within your own life. So if you've ever felt stuck in old patterns, I know I certainly have, or wanted a way to finally feel calm, clear, and connected, this conversation is for you. This podcast is brought to you by Maui Nui Venison. I love this brand. I've been using it for years and years. It was first given to me as a gift, and then we became customers. And I think like a lot of you, I'm always looking for ways to make things like lunch cleaner and easier, but you don't want to lose flavor. I mean, I think that's the balance, right? Like, how is it good for me, but I enjoy it and love it? And I found my go-to, one of my go-tos, Maui Nui's Always Summer Sausage. It's not your typical deli meat. So it's made from wild harvested access deer from Maui. It's lean, clean protein with no fillers, no sugar, no junk. I love this because in my day we called it cold cuts, but the idea of this being something that's healthy, I'm just really excited about. It's lightly seasoned and naturally smoked. It's got this subtle savory flavor that's somehow both rich, but it's really refreshing. Each serving has 20 grams of protein and only 110 calories. So it fuels you without slowing you down. I'll slice it for a sandwich, add it to eggs, or eat it straight from the fridge if I'm really in a hurry. And I always feel energized, never heavy. And here's the best part. Every bite supports sustainable wildlife management and a healthier planet. It's protein with a purpose, and it tastes incredible. So if you're interested, you can get your Always Summer Sausage by going to MauiNuiVenison.com/Gabby. Again, that's MauiNuiVenison.com/Gabby. Before it sells out, that's MauiNuiVenison.com/Gabby. And of course, feel free if they ask, hey, where'd you hear from us? Tell them you heard from the show. Anna Runkle, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
You look like you're in a pink flower haven over there.
Yeah. Let's say it's a pink flower haven. It's a really grubby office where everything that's off camera is totally cluttered. And because I just finished a whole process of launching a book. So there's paper everywhere.
Well, launching a book I always say it's like having a little baby, finally birthing it. I know it's not your first book. So this book, Connectability, maybe we can just start first with you. I was thinking about this when I was getting ready for this conversation because I'm in a place, I've been saying for a few years now, where I appreciate all the data. I appreciate all the information, but I'm also really interested in people who have a practice meaning the day-to-day practice. They sort of have navigated things. And you're really a perfect example of somebody who through their own experience has built this practice, if you will, and system to help other people navigate, whether it's childhood trauma or other types of trauma. And I was thinking dually, like for me as a person, I'm excited to talk to you, but also for you, because everyone's like, oh, well, what are your credentials and all of that? How that must be such an interesting world for you to navigate.
Yeah, I'm not a therapist or doctor. I had to figure this out myself because the conventional routes were not helping me.
You go by the crappy childhood
fairy.
Yeah,
crappy
fairy,
childhood fairy.
And I feel like most people sort of feel like they have this, something has happened, right? And obviously some are more serious than others. And part of me often thinks like, for most of us, it's like, we're supposed to get this homework. It doesn't mean it's fair, but it was like, okay, well, you come into this world, here's your homework. Now go work it out. That oftentimes is hard. So maybe you can just share part of your story on how you got here so people really understand your journey.
My parents, my mom especially, was a big hippie. And we lived in Berkeley. And when my parents got divorced when I was 7, she brought in all these housemates, and it was like a commune. But it was all
Yeah.
about drugs and alcohol. And that was the problem in my family. Like, my parents were educated, kind people, but the alcoholism completely took over everything. And then drugs for my mom. So we had a childhood, my siblings and me, that was about what you'd expect in an alcoholic home of any kind, which is
Yeah.
there was a lot of neglect. We weren't always fed. There was violence between the grown-ups sometimes. There were creeps walking through the house all the time. And we had to kind of fend for ourselves. And I came out lucky compared to some of my siblings because my coping mechanism was kind of to overfunction, go make friends with all the moms and teachers, and just get what I needed.
I'm so curious about that, as I think about that a lot. How, when they always talk about nature versus nurture, I personally, I did not live with either one of my parents from age 2 to 7. My
Mm.
father died when I was 5, and I reunited with my mother at 7. And this
Wow.
isn't to throw her under the bus, it's just a reference point. And, she wasn't, let's say, kind of, I wouldn't say she's on it,
Yeah.
right? And I feel like some of us, you just said it about yourself, like you have these mechanisms that I do think you come into the world with,
Yeah.
where some people cope a certain way and others they can't cope.
Yeah.
Um, and so I'm curious, in sort of all the conversations and all the people you have met, does that just feel like a luck of the draw?
That's like one of the great mysteries.
I know.
I spent so many years feeling like I got ripped off by the way my parents were. But I've had enough. I'm old enough now, and they've been gone so long. Like, but my dad died when I was 15, my mom when I was 30. I'm 62. It's been a
Yeah.
very long time. And then having my own kids. My mom, I just don't think she wanted kids. She came from a time when that's just what you did. She started early. She was married a bunch of times. You know, and but when she would get drunk and just be like, if I didn't have you kids, I could go do all this stuff. But I thought about what age she was when she was saying that. I don't know. I feel for her. She wasn't a great mom, but she was a very interesting person, very beautiful,
Mm.
intelligent. She was one of the first computer programmers there was. But all of her opportunities were squandered. I grew up on welfare, and it was gradually, like, this is a weird nuance of my childhood. Gradually, I realized later, maybe in my early 20s, because most of my friends were like other poor people, and most of them didn't have parents with advanced degrees and engineering firms and things like that she had had. I mean, we didn't have any of that in the end, but there were a lot of advantages to growing up with people who had themselves been brought up very well and who had
Mm.
been well educated. And like, one of the things is the way that my siblings and I talk. We talk like our parents are super high functioning, at that level of education, and just stuff like that. Like, my ability to speak has become my career, my ability to write, making friends with teachers, being teachers' pet. That's a pretty good coping strategy. I became, like the smart kid. I'm glad for that, because in my siblings, there's about like a 50% rate of very grave alcoholism and addiction.
Yeah.
So
It just, like I said, it sometimes just feels like, I don't want to say like a genetic luck of the draw, but there
yeah,
obviously the nurture component. I have 3 daughters. It's like you also realize, like, people are all born how they're born, and
yeah,
it's like that mystery
hmm,
component of, well, if you can do this, it'll help you so much, and it's like, yeah, well, I can't do that. It's just this. I always am just so fascinated by that dance, and I'm just, from all the people that you've seen, because you'll give people these practices, and we're going to get into them, and you have somebody who can go, oh, okay, I can do that, and then make progress and
yeah,
change and kind of start
yeah.
to move on. What I'm interested in is, how do you reach the people who do have a different capacity, or in this scenario, less capacity to kind of heal and put systems in place to feel better, to change, to regulate their systems, whatever that is. How have you found the ways to reach those people?
I learned my techniques. I stumbled on them 30 years ago when I was sort of hitting bottom with all my trauma symptoms. And very quickly, I was changing in such a way that people were asking me, what did you just do? And I started going to this 12-step program for families of alcoholics. And like, immediately, I was one of the people who was sponsoring other women there, which normally would take people a long time. But I was just the techniques that I stumbled on, I was making progress in a way that changed my whole appearance, changed my outlook. Like, things, I had been in therapy for years, getting worse and worse, and then I stopped and did this different thing and popped out of depression and trauma symptoms. It was very marked what happened to me. And in 12-step recovery, I was trying to show people what I was doing. And I think I showed about 300 women over the years and sponsored many of them long term. But there, I had all those years of experience before I started Crappy Childhood Fairy, becoming like totally neutral. Like, if you don't want what I do, that's fine. I'm not trying to make you do anything. You should do what you think is best. And I would get asked by so many people to help them that I couldn't really manage people. I didn't have time to like argue with people about what I was teaching. It's like, if you want it, I'll show it to you. But if you don't like it, just don't do it.
Yeah.
And that's been actually a really good way to be for this. And funnily enough, when I first put it on YouTube, it's grown into almost 1 million subscribers now. Like,
Mm.
a lot of people would like to know about this. My theory is, we talk about nature versus nurture. I mean, my nursery school report card, I still have it, and it says, Anna Marie is such a chatterbox. It was like the big problem with me. But now I'm a professional chatterbox,
Yeah.
and I've been able to make a difference in the world through speaking and talking about my experience. And so I think, like, I was born to do what I'm doing. It wasn't always
Yeah.
rewarded, when I was younger, but I was born to do what I'm doing, and it makes me really happy to do it.
Well, what's the feedback though of people who they tried a lot of things? And, I always love the idea too of like, you can't think your way out of a feeling problem. And, you know, you talk a lot about, the nervous system and regulating the nervous system, but from maybe just from the feedback of people that have really been struggling, they've gone
Mhm.
through things, they haven't had success. What were the parts of your practice, of your system that sort of were the most impactful on the feedback side?
Well, there's the people who benefit the most from what I teach are sort of ready to look at things differently, because I'm sort of positing something very radical here. I went to therapy for what years, like what was 11 therapists, 17 years or something. And it wasn't going anywhere. And back then, it's not totally true now. It's somewhat true, but it's not. Back then it was like you're supposed to talk about everything. And like my mom's alcoholism was so spectacular and fascinating. You could talk about that and pay good money for it year after year after
Mm.
year. And I would change therapists when it didn't go anywhere after a year or two. And then I'd have to start all over again. I'd be like, can we like condense the story? And my experience was, I do think that we need to tell other people. And going to that 12-step program was so great to be able to just like parse out, this is what it was like for me. But the reason it wasn't working for me is because talking about trauma in the past was totally dysregulating for me. And it turns out that's very normal. Lots of people are like that, not everybody. But I would just completely lose my ability to focus, listen, remember, get very like emotionally flipped out and leave shaking every time. And they'd be like, yeah, it's going to be hard for a long time before it gets better. And all this stuff that, thank goodness I got out, because it was pushing me to the brink of ending my life.
What was the moment? What was the moment that you thought, okay, this isn't working?
Well, I didn't even know there was an alternative. Like, that's what you're supposed to go talk to somebody. So I thought that I was some sort of defective person, and everybody else loves therapy. It's supposed to work. I liked my therapist. They were really nice. They were well educated. They wanted the best for me, but it's just the idea of it all, this whole thing that it's about my story. It's about what happened to me. But that's not where any of the solution was for me. My whole problem of present time, as it always is in stuff that how I was living today. That was my problem. Because of all my trauma, I had become very self-centered. I would think a lot about how people affected me, but I was very unaware about how I affected them. And I think
Mm.
for a certain amount of time, I got away with it because I was young and pretty. And then I wasn't getting away with it, and people were fed up with me. I was very thoughtless, and yeah, not. I would always be thinking there's these better people. The reason I'm unhappy is because there's better people out there. I just haven't found them yet, and these are like my temporary people, which is like
Mm.
basically treating people like they're disposable. And I can see that now, but at the time I was just grasping at straws. I was drowning all the time, just feeling really alone inside and really frantic. But things came to a head. I was 30. I had had my heart broken by somebody who really mattered to me some months before. And in this 1 week period, my mother died, and
Mhm.
I was attacked on the street. I was beaten unconscious on the street randomly, very
Just
violently. Yeah, like it was a gang thing. There was graffiti on the sidewalk afterwards, and they broke my jaw and my teeth. Didn't take my money. I had money. They didn't. It wasn't that. It was just, yeah. It was
Yeah.
just like this
Like
terrible thing that happened, and I had a concussion and I had PTSD afterwards. But believe it or not, 30 years ago, they didn't see that sort of like episode to be PTSD. Like PTSD was for combat veterans, but
more.
not
Mhm.
for that. But so I was never diagnosed by them, but it's pretty obvious by what PTSD is. Yes, of course, I had PTSD. It was a real life and death struggle to get out of that, and it was pretty severe. So after that happened, I couldn't function well. I had been compartmentalizing all the hardships of my life pretty well with over functioning all that time, and I just lost it. I couldn't work, couldn't put my thoughts together. I couldn't really get along with people. I was emotionally dysregulated. I was shooting my mouth off. If I didn't feel like people were helping me enough, I would just like yell at them. I was about to get fired. Like everything was breaking down. So within a couple months after that assault, I was hopeless. And then, when you get assaulted in California, you get all this money to go to therapy, which is very generous of the state. But going to therapy 3 times a week became 3 times as toxic for me as 1 time a week. I had no recovery time. I got so dysregulated, I couldn't get out of it. But dysregulation wasn't even a concept back then. And it was interpreted, I think, as emotional distress. But I would say now, my nervous system was just completely broken down. I couldn't control my emotions or focus or anything. So it was a very tough spot. And I happened to tell an acquaintance, I was giving her a ride one night. I just said, I think tomorrow's the day. I got to end it. And she said, you know what? I have felt that way before. Come in. You want to talk about this? And she gave me a cup of tea and we ended up talking all night. And she was telling me about how she had ended up homeless and she had been an alcoholic. And when she was 17, she couldn't keep the alcohol down and had to get sober. But then she felt like she couldn't go on. And then somebody showed her how to use this technique. She said, do you want me to show you? And I'm like, all right. And all it was a piece of paper and a pen. And it was basically like a written prayer about your fears and resentments and give them to God. And at
Mm.
that time, I was like, oh, God, that's for weirdos. I don't like it. She was just like, okay, fine. If you, the attitude I told you, if you don't want it, fine.
Yeah.
I'll show this to anybody who wants it, but you don't have to do it. But I did want it. And I had her show me how to do it. And I wrote for hours. I went home, I slept, and I woke up. And for the first time that I could remember, then I woke up like in a state of peace. I just felt peace. I
Mm.
felt like, okay. It wasn't like all my problems were solved or anything, but I was just okay. And so she said, well, keep doing it and give me a call. And then I did. And I called her and she goes, read to me what you wrote. And I read it to her. And by the end of the call, we were like laughing. We were just laughing our asses off like women do, like, just like, I know it's like that. I know there was this thing. And all of a sudden I had this like lightheartedness about problems. They were still problems, but most of my problems were just because I couldn't get free of all the rumination and kind of mental churn about ordinary problems, some guy, some paycheck, some job, whatever. These are not, they're normal problems, but it had all become too much for me. And so I just kept going. And here we are many years later, and I'm still doing it. And I'm teaching everybody who wants to know. Because when that happened, everybody could see the difference in me. I mean, my whole face changed like right away. It was quite profound. So I have this different point of view about what can work. I don't claim it works for everybody or that other things don't work for anybody, but that for a person like me, that focus on the past and what other people did was ruining me, and that I needed to be able to name, like face and name what the problem was in here and in here and get it out. And it was a prayerful act because I couldn't manage my thoughts myself, and it just worked. It just worked. And then she said, go learn meditation. So it's writing technique and then meditation. And when I teach it, people don't have to have a belief in God or a higher power. They can release it if they choose.
Yeah.
And everybody gets to do it how they want to do it. You have to be yourself. So
Your latest book, Connectability, which feels like almost the second step. Like you talk a lot about dysregulation or being
yeah,
dysregulated. And then it feels like maybe once somebody kind of not graduates, because I think that in itself is a constant practice.
it is. It is. I'm here to tell you, like, I don't do it. And I'm just like,
Yeah. And that's the thing that's at the top of this conversation, what I get not obsessed with, but
Mhm.
really focused on is reminding people everything is a practice.
Yeah.
And kind of to feel whether it's peaceful or homeostasis, whatever the word people want to use that you get to float in and out of. By the way, that's an everyday pursuit. I think even regardless of trauma, we're not really set up to be, I'll put it in air quotes, happy. We're set up to survive. And having these types of practices, I think are beneficial really to anyone.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, a lot of people use my techniques, and I think about 1 million people are using it now out there.
Yeah.
It's hard to say, I don't have an exact tally, but I've surveyed
Right.
people who use it and how they use it. About 15% of my students are themselves therapists and doctors, and they use it for themselves, for their own symptoms. They 3/4 of them prescribe it to their patients and clients. People who work in healthcare, they bring it into hospices, they bring it into preschools, they bring it, this is something anybody can do. I started my channel when I first learned the word dysregulation. That was, believe it or not, like that was just not a word we had 10 years ago. And I read the Bessel van der Kolk book. And because I had had an episode of emotional dysregulation that almost pushed my husband away. And so I had to get very serious about learning what was that. And I had a word for it, but it also, like, all of a sudden, like, these techniques I'd been using at that time for over 20 years, I'm like, oh, that's what was wrong, that's what this treats in me.
When you say, just for the sort of layman, when you say you got really dysregulated, how does that show up?
We all have a nervous system, and it gets dysregulated sometimes. Everybody gets it sometimes.
Yeah.
So maybe you almost bump into the car in front of you and you freak out and you can't really settle down. You're probably dysregulated. You can get it from a shock. You can get it from getting your feelings hurt. If you had
Oh,
trauma growing up, it can happen at the oddest times. And it sort of goes along with anxiety, but it's like this extra layer of, like, maybe you can't feel your hands, or you're very discombobulated, or your emotions are either like gone right now or they're way too strong. And you're
mm,
lashing out, or you're like, that's it, it's over. And like high drama behavior that feels true in the moment, but it's emotional dysregulation. And so they know now that neglect, abuse, yes, but especially neglect in early childhood can cause what is in effect an injury in your nervous system that makes it get more easily dysregulated than most people. So whereas somebody with a sort of normally operating nervous system, they'll get dysregulated, they'll get better, they'll come back to center. But a person with trauma can just go on and then ruminate, and then get triggered right back into it every time that topic comes up. And here's why the talk therapy and talking again and again about what happened to me as a kid would just keep throwing my nervous system into chaos every time. So nobody knew what it was, and they thought I was just sensitive or very emotional. And it's always been treated as like a psychological thing. Childhood trauma is psychological. And of course it is, but it's also very much neurological.
This podcast has been brought to you by Laird Superfood. I know it's not fair. Laird Superfood was started in my kitchen, so yes, I'm excited to share it with you. It was started about 10 years ago. Not only does my entire family consume it, but Laird and I work on every product. What goes in the bag, the testing, we have really strict guardrails, but forget all that. It is so delicious. We've got coffees, Peruvian high altitude, low acidic coffees. We've got delicious creamers, bars, greens. But the thing I want to share with you today is our instant category. Now, a lot of times people think, oh, instant. Believe me, not only do we not sacrifice on ingredients, but it is so delicious and so convenient. So let's say you're on the go. Maybe you're working in an office or traveling on an airplane or maybe heading to college. I love our instant category so much because all you have to do is add hot water. If you like to ice your stuff, you can easily do that too, but it's so easy to use. It has high level coffee ingredients with our creamers. We've got instant latte, instant mocha, our latest instant vanilla latte. It is so delicious. I'm not a real vanilla girl, but I love this instant vanilla latte. Why? First of all, we use real vanilla, no natural flavors, no artificial flavors, no weird ingredients. Just incredible ingredients, MCT oil, so really nice for your energy, that sustained energy. You don't crash and kind of get like caffeine up and jittery down. Just a nice, smooth delivery. And again, it's so simple to use. All you do is add hot water wherever you are. So if you've never checked out Laird Superfood, by all means, see if what product suits your lifestyle the best. But I want to tell you, I love our instant products. And actually, pretty soon, in about 2 weeks, we're even going to have our instant pumpkin latte for those of you who like that little spicy bit. And if you're not a coffee drinker, I even have instant matcha, really, really trendy, and instant chai. And if you want to, head to lairdsuperfood.com. And if you put in the code Gabby20, so it's LAIRDSUPERFOOD.com. And don't forget to use the code Gabby, GABBY 20 at checkout for 20% off your entire order. I promise you will find something that not only you love, but will make your life just a little tastier, easier, and more energized. You know how also like we'll pass on some of our funk, to our kids. Like,
I never did. No, I'm kidding. Oh, yeah, I know.
like, you're the one.
I'm the
Congratulations.
one. It's all been perfect in every way. Why? Tell me about this.
I'm just wondering if when they were younger and you were starting this process of your own kind of navigation of like, okay, let me see if I can figure out some techniques to help regulate me and
Yeah.
stay connected and be in these situations. Was there anything you were able, and obviously it's harder when you're someone's parent, they don't listen to you as well, but did you slip in any practices
Yes.
with the kids when they were younger
Yes, I
to
did.
even
And
give them
and
tools?
I started these techniques before I ever had kids. So the
Yeah.
whole time I was pregnant, I was writing and meditating. And sometimes I'd be at my meditation teacher's house and everybody would be writing and meditating together and the baby would jump in my tummy and I would just be like I was very aware it was like magical and wonderful that I'm in a state of rest and peace and you get to grow up in my body. Yes, you do. It's a gift.
Yeah.
and and so they were getting to experience regulation, but my first marriage was very chaotic and upsetting, and so they also, I mean, in whatever way that babies in the tummy are experiencing that stress too, they did experience that, and they heard fighting when they were little, so they were exposed to rough stuff. But they're good kids, and their dad and I, after a miserable divorce, actually got very cooperative and co-parented pretty well, and we would take turns with them very rigorously. We'd made it so each of us would see them every day. We were pretty, we were really into trying to do the best we could under the circumstances. And so one time he had them on a road trip. And the kids, well, so the kids knew that I wrote and meditated. And he then became a person who wrote and meditated too. He used my
Was
techniques,
that
but
after the divorce?
it was the thing that precipitated the divorce. He finally learned the thing. I used to be very invested in who should, like, if only everybody would do what I do, they'd be so great. And I thought he would be great. And I was right. He did turn out much nicer after he did it, but not for me. he, he literally went and learned the techniques from this guy, and then he came to the front door. He was letting himself in, and I opened the door, and he was standing there. He looked like the sun was shining out of his head or something. And I was like, "So you like that?" And he goes, "Yeah, you know what? We got to get divorced." And it was true. It was true.
Um,
That's one of the things, like, we all think, like, if I do the good spiritual girl thing, I get to have the thing that looks
yeah.
good and is safe and everything's
Mm,
all like okay. But the right thing was never for us to be together. It was a terrible, discordant relationship. So he's been doing it ever since. He's way into it. So he had the kids. So the kids, when they were toddlers, their privilege, if they were very quiet, they could come sit on my lap while I wrote and meditated. And I had, boppy pillows, those
yeah.
those like C-shaped pillows you use to nurse. And I was often having to kind of manage life myself. I don't talk about this phase very much, but I'd have some like lean cuisine or something that I was eating, nursing with the boppy pillow, ear on the phone, listening to somebody read their what they had written to me, helping them with their technique, rice falling into my baby's ear, and trying to like get the rice out of his ear, just trying to do a million things at once. But then I would rest in meditation. And they got to do that as babies. And when they were even 4 years old, they were allowed to go get this particular blanket. We still have this blanket. It's very like full of holes. It's from IKEA. It wasn't good to begin with. The red blanket. If you bring it over, you can sit on my lap and just sit with me while I write and meditate. And that was like their
Mhm.
big thing that they coveted.
Yeah.
So they always liked the idea. And then I would take dictation for them. They could name their fears for me. And I'd say, there, now ask for them to be removed. and they would do it. And the thing, kids are very gullible. You can tell them anything. So whereas I had a little bit of an ideological struggle, like, can I really do this? They were just like, yay, that is better. And so one of my kids still does it every day in his mid 20s. One of them does it occasionally when he's in trouble or something. But
Yeah.
yeah,
So if people are in a starting point, and they want to, because I really also found it fascinating, like you talk about perception, healing perception, and things like
yes,
that. If somebody's like, okay, I'm interested, we've talked about the meditation, and you have even quizzes on your site, right? Like,
I do.
isn't that,
Yeah.
because I think a lot of people, so they can come to your site and watch you on YouTube. But if what are some of the other techniques that you discovered that really helped you? Because I would imagine it's not just good for your specific type of PTSD, but these are techniques that would work for a lot of different things.
Well, I learned it from a bunch of dual diagnosis alcoholics, who also, many of them had like diagnosed mental disorders and had often been living on the streets, and they were living, functional lives and being, sober, long term sobriety. So I learned it from people who had greater difficulties than me, which in a way was very persuasive. I kind of knew I was a bull in a china shop whenever I was in therapy or at a 12-step meeting or something. I always knew there's something extra about me. And there's something extra, and it's trauma. It's trauma. I mean, that's just like, this had not been articulated before. Like
Mhm.
they'd say, "Oh, you're an adult child of an alcoholic," and I definitely am, and I have classic symptoms of that. But there was something extra. It wasn't. It just, like, it couldn't be only about their drinking anymore. There was something in here, the way that I reacted to life, the way that I would sabotage stuff in my best interest, even though I had worked so hard for them, even though I couldn't see it coming. I didn't realize I was about to do that. Just like weird glitches in my logic and my reasoning and my decision making that would just really throw me under the bus again and again and again. And that was my trauma playing out. And when I finally learned what the word for it was and understood that if I could stay re regulated, which I had always known how to do, but I just didn't know that's what it was. I thought I was just like getting rid of feelings or, feeling better. I needed to feel better. Everybody does need to feel better. But then I realized, okay, so if this is re regulating my brain, what else could I do that would help me stay more regulated? And I was finally able to put the puzzle pieces together. Oh, when I'm regulated, I can see what the problem is, and I can start to solve that problem. Because everybody with trauma, many people, but people with trauma especially, have these life problems. It just comes with the territory. You have these terrible relationships, money problems, working for people you hate, living in neighborhoods where you don't get along with anybody, these health problems, chronic disease. There's just, life is hard when you
Yeah.
have trauma, and all you ever had was this idea that if you talk about it, it will stop being a problem. And it just wasn't my experience. And so I just set about on a very systematic way to change my life, to stop. I just decided I'm never again going to have a destructive relationship with a man. I'll have no relationship, or I'll have a good one. And I just spent a couple of years getting very clear what that is. Since I made that decision, by the way, I only ever dated one person. And I'm married to him right now. Like, I just, somebody came along who fit what I knew was important. There's this horrible problem when you grew up neglected, that you're not attracted to good, stable people. It's like the bad ones, the high drama women or the bad boys or whatever. That's who seems attractive. And it's hard to explain the heart, why. I call it the eroticization of abandonment. It's just this thing that people have where the wrong person is who feels attractive, and a stable person feels boring or judgmental or something. And it's very, I don't think we can explain it exactly cognitively. When people say, "Oh, you're just trying to recreate your childhood," I say, bullshit. Of course you're not. You're not trying to do that. But there is an irrational component. The way that we fall in love, the people we feel attracted to, is this mysterious thing that's very hard to change. But it changed in me by taking this time for total peace and clarity. It changed in me. And it's like I sort of woke up to better qualities. And first I had to write them on paper. Like, it has to be somebody who does not now and has never had a problem with drugs and alcohol. For me, that's like kryptonite.
Did you also write down, while you're writing of what you're looking for, were you also writing down who you were wanting to be, who you wanted to show up as? Were you sort of writing that expectation down as well?
I had always done that, but the thing I did about myself was different. And for me, it was a very spiritual process. And this is kind of like the advanced story of like what happened is I kind of had reached a point where I knew that I had no idea what to do, that I didn't even know who I was supposed to be anymore, and I'm very intelligent, I'm capable, I'm creative, I could make all kinds of things happen in my life, but the stuff that I made happen in my personal life ended up being destructive in ways that I couldn't predict. So it was a prayerful act for me to say, I don't know what to do. Will you help me? I just don't
Yeah.
know what to do. I don't even know what I'm supposed to be. And if I'm supposed to be a nun, then do it. I don't care. I'm like, I'm not gonna, I just don't want to have the problems that I create anymore. But for my kids' sake, I had to have obviously we all do. For my kids' sake, I have to be a certain kind of person. And that's not woo woo, just it's a matter of practical living. You have to have enough money. You have to have structure. You have to keep the home peaceful and help them. But in terms of if I was going to bring a man into our lives, because that's very risky, the statistics are not great about bringing in a stepdad into your kid's life.
Yeah.
Most of them are good, but if you're not a good judge of character, then bad things can happen. And I knew that was true of me, and I knew that that could never happen. And so I wrote down the qualities, like they have to be like this, they cannot be like this. One of the qualities was they have to be open to marriage. I'm not here for some long-term off-on thing. I don't even want that. I've had all of that I would ever need in a lifetime, And if I'm going to do this, it's for marriage. And if I marry somebody, they have to be like all in on helping me raise the kids, not like
Mm.
a secondary person who is ambivalent about them. I grew up with a stepdad like that, and it was better than nothing, but it would have been nicer to have him embrace me as one of his own.
Yeah.
So I just wrote this stuff down, and I really thought, like, I've made such a tall order, it can't possibly happen, but okay. So I was very serious about it. So a lot of what I teach and coach people on has to do both with connecting in life, not playing small anymore in order to manage your dysregulation and these problems that just come out of nowhere, and then dating, how to date like in a very structured way so that you're clear what you want, and you don't date anything that isn't what you want. You just don't do it. I mean, it's sounds like rocket science. It was to me.
But how about in this day and age? I'm just curious, like with all this digital, the apps, all this stuff, it's
Yeah,
like something about seeing somebody, smelling them, your instinct,
yeah,
looking in their eyeball.
yeah,
It's like these are real indicators. I think these are clear communications to us about this person
absolutely.
that our body reads, I think, pretty well, especially if we're in tune enough with ourselves.
Yeah,
So, how are you helping people navigate it now? Because I feel like they have an extra layer to, well, layers to deal with. Are there different rules in play, or is it like, hey, just go
oh
on the
yeah.
date and then
No,
see
it's
how,
different
like,
rules.
how does it
Different rules.
go?
All right, I'm going to lay it on you here. If you have attachment wounds and you end up getting attached suddenly to people who are not good for you, if you want to change what happens, you have to not attach. And do you know how you don't attach? You don't have sex.
Mm.
And so a lot of people, when they first come to me, they're like, well, I'll never meet anybody who doesn't want that. And it's like, you don't want to date the people who are going to like leave you if you're not going to have quick sex with them. And
There
that's
are
just not going
grown
to
ups.
register with a lot of people as a
Yeah. And
worthwhile thing to do.
it's so interesting you say that because somehow that's perceived maybe as, oh, it's conservative, it's uptight. There's actually plenty of men, or women, but I'm assuming it's more of one side to the other.
Yeah, I think it's
Um,
both.
if it's worth it to them,
They want
they'll
it
wait.
themselves. They don't want to have craziness anymore either.
Yeah,
A lot of people, even at a young age, they're sick and tired of the whole sort of porn driven, Tinder driven,
it's too much.
objectification thing. If you want something real, you're going to have to go to a different level on it. And it involves getting to know people. And this was one of the radical things one of my mentors taught me was the purpose of dating. I'm like, what? What is it? Because for me, it was like, just like get all entangled with somebody and then retroactively find out if it works, right?
Sounds like
Back
the FDA and our
but
food
it,
ingredients.
try for a while to make them into the person you hoped they were, and when that doesn't work, get
Mm.
dumped and move on. But that was like the routine. But instead, dating is to get to know somebody if you want to get to know them better. And so the longer the time buffer you put in before having sex, especially, I think this is more true for women than men, but men, men also get attached, and they get attached and they get hurt. But for women, once sex happens, it's really hard to back out and to be like, yeah, I don't think this is going that well. And I know there are exceptions and some women can do it. But if you have attachment wounds and you're getting your heart broken all the time, and just like hands down, this is the thing to do. And the culture is so used to that not being acceptable that it's hard to believe it works. But I mean, it's amazing how much it works. And then there's sort of an energetic thing that goes with that. For me as a woman, I used to be a little bit more like trying to make things happen. If I liked a guy, I'd be like, come on, when are we going to get together? When are you going to call? Let's make some plans here. And I learned from my mentor, who was a man, who said, you were told, and I know you're a feminist, Anna, you were told that you should play an equal role in trying to make everything happen and you should pay for it. But I'm going to tell you something different. Let them do that part, especially at first. Let them do it. It's so funny. I've made videos about this, and then like a whole bunch of people will just like get furious at me and unsubscribe. But I'm like, you might as well unsubscribe, because what you're going to learn from me is that there's some stuff that we do that is causing this heartbreak to happen over and over again. So nobody has to let the man pay. Nobody has to let them do all the asking. But the minute I changed my tack, and it was very difficult, my now husband, we were dating a little bit, but he was kind of like not moving forward. And then he sort of called it off, and then he sort of came back. And my mentor, who I went to this man I knew, I'm like, help me out. I really like him. I feel like this is a good relationship, but I'm totally bungling it and I don't know how. And he helped me, and he said, just like sit on your hands. Don't try to initiate anything. I used to be, even after he broke up with me, I'm like, what are you doing? Are you hanging out after this? Are you, blah, blah, blah. I was always trying to like make something happen. And so I just didn't. And it was like 2 weeks. My husband became obsessed with me. I just had to like stop. I just had to let him do the man thing of finding his way towards me.
This podcast is brought to you by Superpower. I don't know about you, but sometimes you go to a doctor's appointment and it's not that you don't feel like you didn't get anything, but it feels like you didn't get what you wanted. And you know that drill. It's like, hey, don't worry about it. You're fine. Make sure you're exercising, drink water, but not that real data, no clear plan, just a pat on the back and sort of like a little guessing on my end. So that's why I really appreciate Superpower. They're changing the game. You either get a licensed professional to come to your home, so convenient, maybe you're really busy, or you can visit a nearby lab, and that's also very easy, and it's just one simple blood draw. So here's the kicker. They measure over 100 biomarkers. That's way more than you usually get, and it unlocks so much about your body. So through their app, you get detailed insights on your heart, liver, thyroid, hormones, even your metabolism, things like vitamins and minerals, and even, I love this, environmental toxins. So whether you're trying to prevent diseases, fix that annoying brain fog, tell me about it, or just optimize your gym game and see how you're doing, Superpower gives you the full picture. I don't know about you, but I've spent years constantly guessing, about my health, what supplements I should take, how much should I sleep? I really, how much do I need, what my diet should focus on. With Superpower, I really can get that personalized actual plan based on real results, supplement suggestions, nutrition guidance, lifestyle adjustments, even my true biological age that I can track over time. I love this because with the right moves, you can actually turn back your age biologically. So every test builds on the last, giving me a complete view of my progress year after year. So here's the best part, and this is what I'm excited to share with you. This usually costs about $499. Well, now it's just $199 for full experience. That's way more affordable than anything else out there. Other testing, it usually is $500 to about $1,000, sometimes more, less information. So stop reacting to health problems, start proactively improving your health based on real data. Your blueprint activated with Superpower. So right now, for our listeners, there's an extra bonus, $20 off with the code TAKE20 at checkout. All you have to do is go to superpower.com and use the code TAKE20, and you make sure to mention this podcast when they ask, hey, how'd you hear about us? That's superpower.com, superpower.com, and don't forget the code TAKE20, TAKE20. I always think getting a look under the hood is so helpful and such a great way to start either maintaining your health, improving your health, or getting going. Is it over simplistic to say, have you ever been in a situation where you think to yourself as it's happening in real time, oh, I know what this is?
Yeah,
And do you have the ability to just say, oh, I'm not going to bite this
yeah,
hook? Like, I know
on
what it
most things.
is.
On most things.
Mm.
Not everything. There's just some things. I don't know, you know.
Do you ever get surprised? Like, oh, either way.
Oh god. Yeah, well, like a year and a half ago, I was trying to make this I was going to shoot a course in my living room. And I was trying to make a plan with my next door neighbor who was having work done. Can you tell me when you're not having work done and I'll have my crew come in that day? And I don't know why the communication was backwards, but she kept like having loud work done as soon as I had a $2,500 crew in the house
Yep.
and scuttled my plans 3 times in a row. And I don't get my money back. And I had a deadline. And I just like, I flipped out on her. I just went out there and all of a sudden just completely lost it. Now, logic that's pure PTSD because even though, yeah, it was wrong, even though she has no idea that she was wrong. To this day, she still, I did apologize and we're on better terms now, but she never said, "Oh, sorry, I just completely ruined what you paid for there."
Yeah.
After all those emails and stuff. But I think it was for whatever reason, the communication was confused in the translation of it. So it wasn't her fault either. And and so I was quickly able to realize that. And I was mortified with myself, but I was like yelling at her in front of her crew. Other neighbors heard it. I was so embarrassed about what I had done. My husband was out and he came home and I'm like, I have to tell you something. And I told him, and I remember he went, oh, it was just so bad. It was such a bad thing to do. And he knew I was flipping out about it. So that was like, that really hurt. It really hurt. I felt really depressed afterwards. I went over to a friend's house and my friend was just like hugging me and she's like, "You're okay,"
Were
And
you hurt because you felt like you knew better, you have the skills and you blew it?
I'm the crappy childhood fairy. I'm supposed to know, but the reason I know is because I have this thing and I feel so much more peace about it now because I have fully apologized for it. I did it immediately. I handled it. But it was a reminder to me, like, probably so long as I live, I'll never be perfect. I'm always going to need this. And so I put myself in jeopardy of slipping when I am not sleeping enough, when I'm pushing myself too hard, when I'm holding too much in, when I'm not moving my body. It's just the usual stuff that everybody needs to kind of stay balanced and regulated. And then spending enough time writing. My technique, like, you can rush it if you want. I got to rush it. I got to hurry up. I got to go do this other thing. And it feels like it. But what is time? Time is when you have the freedom to think about what you want to think and create what you want to create. And
Hmm.
if I'm rushing around and flipping out, I don't have those things. I'm just sitting there going, "Oh, why have I been such an idiot?" And that's not time.
Yeah.
So, yeah, time is being free of all that stuff. So it's always been a good use of my time to go ahead and invest in my self-regulation.
In your latest book, Connectability, you talk about how to speak in a way that you're heard.
Yeah.
It's funny. I have 3 daughters, but my husband is obviously male and having a sports background, I know how to communicate in that language.
Ah,
It's very direct. There's not like a lot of hysteria around it. It's just like, hey, when you did that, it made me feel like this. Um,
cool.
it, well, cool. Yeah. I mean, listen, it's just a system. I think when you come through sports, there's not a lot of time and room for those emotions. It's like you got to execute. What's the goal? Got to adapt. Here we go.
Mhm.
But I have seen where I try to tell my girlfriends, I go, listen, all the words and all the wind up and the blaming and all that, I don't actually think, if your partner is a male especially, I don't actually think they hear all that.
No.
And communicating in a way with the idea of solving it, not being right, but going, hey, listen, can I talk to you about something, because I love you and I want us to stay connected. When this happens, it makes me feel sad, or like you don't appreciate me, whatever the things are. It feels like that's easy. But you talk a lot about um, you know not only speaking in a way to be heard, but even sort of being big, playing big, which
Mhm.
that is very interesting, I think, especially for women.
Yeah, there are so many ways we play small as an unconscious way to manage the dysregulation and stress. Like, I
Yeah.
better not try for a better job, even though
Hmm.
I hate this one, because that will be so stressful that I won't be able to function. But it
Yeah.
starts to be habitual, and I better not leave this relationship because I'll never find anyone. And and so all these under earning is extremely common for people who are dysregulated. It's just like this way of trying to set the dial a little lower so that if too much isn't expected. But the long-term consequences are terrible, and how much better to give yourself more options by learning to regulate without having to make your life small.
Mm. Yeah.
Isolating. That's the biggest thing. Isolating from people to manage the stress and dysregulation.
So it's just the keeping it quiet and simple so that your system gets a break?
Well, it's funny because you have this urge to keep it quiet and simple, but so many of us are not actually succeeding at it anyway. You know?
Yeah.
Then you're just scrolling a bunch of, like, crazy political stuff, or you're, getting all upset at the neighbors, and so
Yeah.
you're not getting the quiet that you want. So you have to find a way to find that peace inside yourself, and I think that's really underrated. Like, people talk about it in Eastern religion, or, like, you wanna have peace, but I don't think it's this huge lofty thing. It's just like an everyday little thing of trying to just turn that dial down a little bit to be like, "Okay, I'm still in my body." A lot of people achieve that peace through exercise, moving their body. That's a very important thing to do to get out of that
Yeah.
mental and emotional overwhelm, or I call it cognitive dysregulation or cognitive clutter, emotional clutter. Clutter is it's kind of the same word as dysregulation. There's just
Yeah.
a lot going on. And so simplifying it a little bit, but it feels good. When you're very overwhelmed and there's too many things to do, there's this really happy state you get in where you knock a few things off the list and then you
Yeah.
feel better because it's less chaotic.
And I think finding the way between not being isolated, but learning to say no is also very, very important. I
Ugh,
think
yeah.
overextending ourselves isn't necessarily a great idea. I think no is a fantastic word.
It is, and boundaries themselves, like, I literally used to think that was a psychobabble word, and people would be like, "I set boundaries with people." I go, "You just sound awful. You sound like a shitty friend. I don't like you," I would think. But I gradually figured out, oh, a boundary is how you decide consciously what you wanna do and what you don't wanna do.
Mhm.
I used to, maybe because of the people I was around, maybe, but I thought that boundaries was this fake word that people used for when they were trying to control you.
Yeah.
I guess they were trying to set boundaries against me, and I didn't like it.
Yeah, you're like, "No, that doesn't work for me, your boundary."
Yeah, your boundary doesn't work for me. I get to kinda go all over the place here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get to
When
run
you
wild in your life, so just stop. Yeah.
and when you do talk about talking in a way to be heard, what does that mean?
I think that being dysregulated, not to mention living in these times, we become quite insensitive to how vulnerable people are. And so
Mm,
when we have a criticism of somebody, it's really easy to pop off on them. So let me think of an example. All right, you go to a restaurant and the server brings you the wrong thing. And if you talk to them in this tone of voice, I told you I didn't want this. I wanted the huevos rancheros. Um, when it comes off that way, that person, it's actually like quite a lot for them to bear. Now, maybe
yeah.
they're a stoic and they're not dealing with those feelings right now, but it feels terrible. It
Mhm.
just feels terrible. Nobody likes the person who talks to people like that, but it's quite common for us to talk that way. And then, well, you put it online where your face isn't there. It's
Oh,
unbelievable what we say to each other. And so to heal means you begin to resensitize about the effect you have on other people. Our
yeah.
nervous systems are talking all the time. So if somebody's serving me my breakfast and I'm sitting in a restaurant, we're actually two beings like in communication with each other. So if I'm pulling some sort of like on them, they feel it, it hurts them, and then I feel bad about myself. So one of my rules of thumb is if I have something, so I had to fire a guy once. The first time I ever had an employee, I had to fire him. It like really wasn't working out. It wasn't a good fit. And I had a lot of stuff I was mad about. I held it in for a long time because I was afraid to face it. And then I was all ready to give him the litany of why he was fired. And my husband, thank God, he's from a totally different background. He's like, "Oh, you never need to tell everybody the 50 reasons that you're ending a
No.
relationship. You just tell them like the tiniest thing because they will need to know what is this about. They need to know what it's about. So you take the tiniest little thing and it can be tiny. I don't know, I used to think like, no, you have to be very honest with people and tell them all the ways that they've let you down. And you really don't. You don't want to leave people all damaged and hurt. If that's going to hobble their ability to face their own problems, that's their problem. You don't make it your problem to make sure they know how terrible they are. And anyway, I'm the unreliable narrator. I'm the one who, when I'm upset about something, I've been holding something in, I might distort it. So I'm very, very careful with criticism if I can be. If I'm not careful with criticism, it never is a good thing. It's just never a good thing. That people are very delicate.
Yeah.
They've been through a lot. I lead these large Zoom calls every week, with my online community. And one of our rules is just remember, for some of the people on this call, just coming to this call was like the hardest thing they're going to do this month, and treat everybody accordingly, just like glad they're here, very gentle, no criticism. And
Mhm.
everybody like obliges. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And in the
I,
rare occasion when somebody gets mean on there, this happened to me. I was leading a free call and a couple of women were on there criticizing me. It's a free call. I've been doing it like every other week for 5 years, and it's for hours. I do it for like hours, and I'll help anybody with anything. And they're just sitting there in the chat going, she's just talking about herself. Oh, I hate it. Yeah. And then other people would chime in and go, hey, stop it. She's just trying to help. It's free. You don't have to be here. And they just kept going on. It went on for 20 minutes, and I was seeing it out of the corner of my eye. I didn't have a moderator. I had like 200 people there or something. So nothing
uh,
like getting insulted in front of 200 people, but I'm to the point where I'm like, and all of a sudden I was thinking like everybody here is looking to me as the role model about how you have a boundary, right? So I'm like,
mhm.
all right, and I'm just like, hey, those of you who are sitting there putting me down, get off the call.
Yeah.
This is free. You don't need to be here. I didn't ask you to be here. You don't have to be here if you don't
Yeah.
like it. So you're ruining it for everybody else, and you're being really rude. And they disappeared. They went away. They're
Yeah.
probably over on Reddit writing a bunch of crap about me now, but I don't care. Just like you
Well,
can't let people treat you like that.
well, right, and that's the world we live in. We live in we the digital courage. I think we can't worry about that. I every time I have conversations around this topic, I think to myself, we're social creatures. We are meant to be together. We're meant to be social in contact, to touch, to all these things. But I always am reminded though that ultimately, going back to what you mentioned earlier, it's like, how do I have that first relationship with myself
Mm,
so that, like, I mean, no matter what is going on, that I find the way to calm myself down. And sometimes
mhm.
there's bigger things. Like, I've had things gone through things when my kids were teenagers where, like, that hug from my husband was really needed because
Yeah,
sometimes I felt overwhelmed. Like, hey,
yeah,
I don't know how we're going to get out of this.
yeah.
Or but mostly it's like, do you find that as you've been doing this work that that relationship to yourself and that ability to not only calm yourself down when we're talking about, not being deregulated, but even loving yourself. And I don't mean like I'm great. I just mean loving yourself, thinking you're worthy, has also made this process exponentially easier.
Well, I think that loving myself, and I would say I do now, but it's the byproduct, not the cause of the changes. And I think
Yes.
for a lot of people, it goes that way. But for me, it
Yes.
was there's that saying, you can't love other people until you love yourself. And I always knew like, well, I know that's not true because I hate myself, but I love others very, very
Mm,
much. And so I knew that wasn't true. But I learned that through growing in my capacity to be loving towards people in general, I ended up having self-esteem and loving myself and being like, that's pretty good, Anna. You did good. You were kind. You did apologize to the neighbor too.
yeah.
So that's how I got over that. But that feeling of self-hatred is terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like you said, those small acts. Well, in winding this up, it's funny, that reminds me of I interviewed a woman about visualization, Maya, and she talked about self-confidence, true self-confidence being connected to our character. And I thought, oh,
I agree.
that's so interesting.
Hmm.
And we think it's out there, the world can tell us how great we are, but really it's still going to be all the quiet things
Yeah.
the things that no one is maybe going to ever see or be like, wow, that's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
That is going to actually give us that
Yeah.
confidence. And even if it's to go out and connect with other people,
That's how you
it's
learn as you start to, if once you tune in, when you're sitting at a party feeling awkward, look around. There's somebody who feels at least as awkward as you and go help them out.
yeah.
And it's a good feeling. And that was something I learned in my 12-step days is about just going out and being of service to other people. It's one of my favorite things. Like somebody told me, they're like, just go early and set up the chairs. And then at the end, put them back down again, even though it should be somebody else's turn, just always be somebody who helps out. And I had this really like, it shouldn't always be me. It's not fair. And I just got over it. I was eager to do anything that would lift that feeling of self-hatred, and always doing something that was useful was where it was at. I was quickly rewarded with a good feeling for that. And so that's really helped me a lot. And I became a very spiritual person, over time. And that's, I mean, I see that as the whole point of my life is to be of service. That's the whole point.
I think that's the point of all of our lives.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's hard for us to get there because we're raised with a really different message,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Especially the
that you
generation.
couldn't, yeah, you couldn't be happy or satisfied by helping other people. This podcast has been brought to you by Laird Superfood. Laird Superfood was started in my kitchen by my husband Laird almost 10 years ago. And this is a brand that's very easy for me to talk about. I'm involved with it every day. And just to share with you some of the thoughts and feelings behind our guardrails, it always starts first with ingredients. So, of course, we wouldn't use artificial ingredients, but one of our guardrails is not to use natural flavors as well, because as you go, you sort of realize like natural flavors, there's some pretty loosey-goosey rules on that. So, best in class ingredients, but we want you to enjoy the experience. We know like it doesn't matter how good something is for you. If you're not going to enjoy it, especially things like your coffees and creamers and a ritual that we do every day, it doesn't really matter. And we also try to really consider cost and accessibility. So that just gives you a sense of where we're coming from. And we have so many incredible SKUs and products that can support you throughout your day. So whether, again, it's coffee or creamers, we've got some incredible coffee, high altitude, low acidic, organic Peruvian coffee, really, really good. We have creamers that are filled with adaptogens. And for the moment, all of our creamers are dairy-free. And you have so many healthy ingredients inside them, but we've got turmeric and mocha, however you like it. And one of my favorite categories are instant products. So a lot of times I think people don't think that you can have these high-level products that are instant where you just add hot water. You can even ice them down if you prefer. We have instant latte, instant mocha. We have an instant maca latte. We have an instant vanilla latte, chai, and matcha for my non-coffee drinkers. And of course, we have our Laird Superfood greens. Easy to mix in water, great soluble ingredients, no fillers. So depending on what you're looking for, bars, coffees, creamers, greens, hydrate products with something called Aquamin in it, Laird Superfood has you covered. And if you have not tried our products, head to lairdsuperfood.com. That's LAIRDSUPERFOOD.com and go ahead and use the code GABBY20, GABBY20 for 20% off your entire order at lairdsuperfood.com. The world now, like you'll hear the word trigger and like the vernacular from when you and I grew up to now is so
Yeah.
wildly different.
Yeah.
And now everybody's self-diagnosing. I have this, I have that. I wonder, how do you feel based on all of the people that you're seeing? It's like, because this type of work and work like this is very, very important for
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
But do you also feel like sometimes we're just not living enough, we're not out there enough, we're not, holding hands enough, we're not working hard enough, we're on our phones too much,
Yeah.
and that a lot of people are confusing this sense of anxiety or stress or hysteria, low capacity to
Oh, yeah.
manage things as kind of our modern lifestyle?
I'm very worried about people who are lost in hysteria right now.
Mm.
I'll give you an example. I did this video where I was talking about this horrible woman who was hitting my husband's in the back of the legs with a stroller. It was this passive aggressive thing she was pretending was a mistake because she felt that he took her parking space. Long story. I made a video about it. Sometimes I'll digress and tell a story. And it was this, and all these people got into the comments and said, "That's assault. You should have called the cops." And I'm like, no. That's child abuse. I'm like, no, not really. It was crappy. It was lame what she did. She had a little kid in a stroller and
Yeah.
she was going boop boop on the back of his legs, not violently, but then she went oops oops. It was very weird behavior. She clearly
Mhm.
was not okay, but it was not violence and it was not child abuse. And the point of the story was, wasn't he great? He just turned around and like laughed at her in a friendly way. He didn't like he just disarmed her with charm, and just went, "What are you doing? Is this about the parking place?" She's like, "Well, yeah, I'm from New York. This is how we do it." And he's like, "Well." But it was not assault. And then just the chorus of things, that was assault. And you have to call child protection services. And as somebody who's fostered a child who was taken away by child protective services, I just want to tell you that things have to be pretty bad before that is the better option. That's
Yeah.
insane.
Yeah.
And yeah, this mother's nuts. But I don't really know her. And I don't really know what the circumstances were. It was meant to be a funny story. And I'm like, I'm worried about people with this crazy idea of what safety is. And that's not safety. Like, safety to me is, I don't know what's going to happen, but I feel confident that I will figure it out. That is
Yeah.
safety. You
Right.
can't control everybody. You can't predict anything. And as somebody who's been a victim of an actual assault, that's what I almost never will comment once I've put the video out there. But I talked back to people and I said, that's not assault. As somebody who's been like beaten unconscious, like bumping somebody with a stroller is not assault. And they
Yeah.
argued with me until they got furious and left. And I just feel worried about people like that. They create a lot of problems for others, is the thing. They're not happy, but they're creating a lot of problems that are unsolvable.
Well, and I think it's the idle time,
Is
right?
that
Like
what it is? Yeah.
well, when they say, even if it's a metaphor, like, idle time is the devil's playground, I
Yep.
think
Right.
this idea of like
Yeah.
everything we order, everything they don't have to go shop, you don't have to cut
Yes.
the food, you're on the phone, you have entertainment 24 hours a day, you're not
Yeah.
bored, you're not in
Yeah.
your imagination, you're not pondering, you're not reading,
Yeah.
you're not
Well,
just
now they're
hanging out
not
with
having
your
sex or dating or having children or getting married. So then
yeah.
I'm like,
So I think
now we're
this
all
is
in trouble.
this is a byproduct. So that's why I always ask people like you who are around this situation, because I always want to encourage people that if we haven't changed biologically in 250,000 years, then we also put other things in our life um, that would that would kind of be settling to us,
Yeah.
because I think it's very tough on people right now, and I have a lot of compassion, but I think you almost have to actively say, okay, I'm going to put my phone away, I'm going to go hike on the hill, I'm going to go hang out with friends, we're not going to bring our phones, just to get these gaps. Because when you sit and write, that time with yourself, that quiet, that thoughtfulness, grabbing words, all of these things are so important and we don't give it any value.
Well, I get to meet really great people who are interested in it. So that's, I guess, part of my lens. I mean, I live
Yes.
in the world and things are a bit rough out there, but when I've done my daily practice techniques,
Yes.
it's such a matter of how you're seeing things. I can
Yeah.
I can walk out of I can walk out of the door and want to hide from everybody and feel like they're against me. But sometimes
Hmm.
I walk out the door and I'm like, well, look at this busy, busy town. Everybody's just working together to make it all go. And the bread's getting baked and the bus driver's here at the stop
Yeah.
on time. And we're we're all just doing our job and making the world go. And it just is like beautiful to me. It's a matter of perspective to a large degree.
Yeah. And I love this idea of like being big and small, like,
Yeah.
be big and then realize like we're just one of 8 billion. It's okay. Nobody cares. Like both, like go out there and be like, oh, hey, good morning. And then just be like, I don't have to be totally self-conscious because nobody really cares. Like this
Yeah.
weird
They're
dance.
not
Well,
thinking about you. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's
But on
very
the other hand,
liberating.
I don't know. I also like I never forget the importance of just having one life, and I
Mm,
feel like for myself anyway, there's a battle of good and evil. It's within and it's without,
yeah.
and
Amen.
everybody, like, we're all sort of working that line about like not trying to tip over. We all have the capacity to go bad. We all have the capacity to do the worst things that people do, and then we have the capacity to kind of stay on the better side of things. And how well we're doing with that is going to dictate not just whether we're happy, but whether we hurt other people or cause problems.
Yeah.
And I don't know anything happier than the feeling that you're You're being who you were made to be. It's not
Mm,
all about, like, "I'm really comfortable, I'm skinny, I'm like, I got money in the bank," like, all those things are nice if you I almost have experienced them all, sort of, maybe not skinny, but but, yeah, but the worst depression is feeling like I'm meant for more, I know it, and I can't figure out what it is, and I'm
mm,
not doing it. I'm sort of falling off the beam. I keep getting sucked into all this other stuff, and I know there's supposed to be more. And I used to wake up in the middle of the night every night with this haunted feeling like, this isn't me. This isn't my life. And
yeah,
then now that's not what happened. I wake up in the middle of the night because the cat makes noise or, throws up or something. But
yeah.
I'm not haunted by this feeling that I'm missing out on my own purpose anymore. And it's a good feeling. It's a kind of happiness, way better than what I was hoping for, even.
Well, Anna Runkle, the thing I really appreciate about your work is that it is very personal and you've, sort of earned every mile and then the willingness to consolidate it and then provide it for other people. I think I read somewhere or I heard something where it was like, you're really like a strategist.
Huh.
I was thinking, it's like, because everyone's like,
Yeah.
oh, therapy, this, that. It's like, well, no, maybe Anna Runkle is a strategist
Yeah. The
um,
practical
who
one.
who has really gone through it personally. And
Yeah.
I'm just curious when you say you meditate, like a lot, how long?
Well, I've been trained in many methods, but the one that I stuck with was transcendental meditation, which is
Yeah,
20 minutes twice a day. And
yeah,
then I recently changed my mantra. I stopped using that one because it wasn't for me anymore and
yeah,
went to something that was more true for me. Still a secret, but
yeah. Of course.
no longer Sanskrit. Yeah.
So, do you like if someone's saying, "Hey, I have a 2-year-old"? I mean, there are opportunities for people to meditate at much shorter periods of time, and even if it was once a day, that would still be impactful.
Yes, I mean, yeah, realistically, learning to meditate regularly. I was a divorced mom of 2 little kids and I did it. It can be done and it actually, like, makes it better and it's doable,
Mhm.
so I sorta wanna put that out there, like, it's a little bit of an illusion that you can't. You will have to get up earlier to do your morning one, but you're going to be more rested because you meditated. There's sort of this trade-off that makes it all work better than if you weren't meditating. But I also know it took me 3 years to get regular with it. I just couldn't pull together the self-discipline, and it never came from self-discipline. It came because somebody died, a boyfriend died, and I was really upset, and I had no consolation except for writing and meditating, and then I got regular with it. And then I finally got to experience, if you're doing my technique twice a day, and I want to stress, like, this is a very specific technique and it's a free course. I'll leave you with the link. I teach
Yep.
it for free, but I want everybody to know how to do it properly because if you just vent on paper, it'll make you feel worse, just like venting verbally will make you feel worse. So it's a specific technique, and then you can follow it with any kind of simple, restful meditation. Let your mind sort of rest and recover. If you do this once a day, or if you use it, if you use it like aspirin when you have a pain, then it will be helpful. But if you use it like a toothbrush twice a day, it's a whole different thing that starts to give you this freedom to make your mistakes, you're just kind of moving at this good clip of going, oh, I see. I have to be honest in that situation. Go back in, write some more, meditate again, and then try again. Oh, I see. Dating the bad boy always turns to ruin. You go back, you write, meditate some more. You start to learn the lessons that maybe we were meant to learn when we were 2 years old or 13 years old, but didn't get to.
Yeah.
Now we're going to learn our lesson. We get to just go really quickly bumbling along in our lives. And the daily practice is a way to rinse off the residue, the emotional, the shame, the mortification. Like, why did I do that? Everybody just saw what an idiot I am, and you're
Yeah.
just rinsing it off every day and you're able to carry on. It's a great freedom and you can grow as a person quite quickly. That's my experience.
Yeah. Well, their latest book, Connectability,
Mhm.
and you have other books if people want to, they can go online.
Yep.
Oh, there it is. I have that book too.
Yeah.
I've read that book as well.
Oh,
Um,
cool. Thank you.
of course. Can you remind people all the places that they can
Yeah.
find you
Yeah.
if they want to take the quiz, do the course?
Most people find me first on YouTube and they watch it
Mhm.
there. And if you decide you like me, come on over to the website at crappychildhoodfairy.com. And there's courses, webinars, a coaching program, whole bunch of stuff going on, and a membership program that allows people to be in community together. It's a very vibrant group where they lead their own daily practice calls many times a day. And so people make friends there, and it's great. Very happy that they exist.
Well, Anna, thanks for everything, and I really appreciate you taking all of your experience and making an opportunity to help other people either shorten the amount of time that they suffer and give them tools to, get out of it sooner. So thank you, and thank you for your time. Thank you, everyone.